Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into the life and teachings of the Buddha.
An excellent choice. It's a rich topic.
It is. We're going to be exploring some fascinating Buddhist texts and legends
Oh, wow.
to kind of uncover who this guy was, right?
Yeah.
This pivotal figure.
Yeah.
And the impact of his teachings. I mean, we'll be uncovering some really surprising details.
Oh, okay.
Accounts of levitation,
Oh, right. Yeah.
vanishing,
Yeah.
and assassination attempts that the Buddha survived.
Really?
Plus, we'll delve into his ideas on mindfulness and meditation, which are surprisingly relevant even today.
It is amazing how, his life story and teachings
Yeah.
have resonated with people for centuries.
For sure.
We'll uncover not just who he was, but also
Yeah.
why his teachings continue to hold such power.
Yeah, I'm eager to unpack those juicy details.
Mm-hmm.
But let's start with who this guy Siddhartha Gautama actually was before he became known as the Buddha, right?
Right. I mean, beyond the serene statues, the incense, he was a real person with a story.
Okay.
Born a prince,
Yeah, okay.
shielded from suffering,
Yep.
the harsh realities of life.
So a privileged upbringing. So
Yeah.
what happened to change that? Did he just suddenly decide to give it all up?
Not exactly, no. The texts describe this pivotal day. Siddhartha encounters an old man,
Mm-hmm.
a sick person, and a corpse, all for the first time.
Wow.
These encounters kind of shattered his illusions about the world
Yeah.
and ignited a quest for a deeper understanding of life.
That's a lot to process in one day.
Right.
This experience must have been a huge turning point in his life.
Absolutely. It led him to renounce his princely title, his family, to seek enlightenment,
Wow.
to embark on this journey of experimenting with different spiritual practices,
Okay.
even extreme asceticism, where he denied himself worldly pleasures.
So picture this. Siddhartha, a prince,
Yeah.
reducing his food intake to a few grains of rice a day. I mean, the text describe him becoming incredibly emaciated.
Yes, but eventually he realized
Yeah.
that this extreme wasn't the path to liberation either.
Okay.
It was in finding the middle path, a balance between indulgence and self-denial,
Okay.
that the real journey began.
That's a powerful lesson in itself, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Finding that balance in life.
Mm-hmm.
So how did he finally achieve enlightenment after, ditching the extreme asceticism?
Well, the story goes that he sat beneath a Bodhi tree,
Okay.
determined to meditate until he reached awakening.
Okay.
But it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
He faced temptations,
Mhm.
inner demons, symbolized in Buddhist texts by the figure of Mara.
Mara. So I'm sensing this wasn't just a quick meditation session.
No, Mara is more than just temptation.
Okay.
Imagine you're on the verge of a major breakthrough,
Mhm.
facing your deepest fears and doubts.
Okay.
That's Mara. The Buddha's encounter with Mara,
Mm.
under the Bodhi trees, it wasn't just a mythical story. It was a representation of this internal battle that
Yeah.
we all face on the path to self-discovery.
Mm.
But the Buddha persevered,
Okay.
ultimately achieving enlightenment
Yeah.
and becoming the Buddha, the awakened one.
Okay. Now that's an epic origin story.
Yeah.
But what about his teachings? What wisdom did he share with the world after his enlightenment?
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
You see, the Buddha's own journey
Yeah.
deeply shaped his understanding of the human condition.
Okay.
The foundation of his teaching
Yeah.
lies in the Four Noble Truths.
Okay.
Think of them as a diagnosis and prescription for the universal human experience.
Okay. So the Four Noble Truths. Let's break those down. I'm ready to be diagnosed.
Right. The first truth acknowledges the reality of suffering.
Okay.
It's not about being pessimistic,
Right.
but about recognizing that suffering is a part of life.
Right.
The second truth points to the cause of suffering,
Okay.
craving and attachment.
Okay.
We crave things, people, experiences, even states of being,
Yeah.
and when we don't get them or we lose them, we suffer.
Makes sense. So it's not just about accepting suffering. It's about understanding
Yes,
why we suffer.
exactly.
Okay.
The third truth affirms the possibility of liberation from suffering.
Okay.
This isn't some wishful thinking,
Right.
but a recognition that we have the power to change our relationship to suffering.
Okay.
And the fourth truth outlines the path to achieve this liberation, which is the Eightfold Path.
So the Eightfold Path is like the treatment plan for the human condition.
The Eightfold Path offers these practical guidelines
Okay.
for ethical conduct,
Mm-hmm.
mental discipline, and wisdom,
Yeah.
all aimed at extinguishing the flames of craving and attachment.
Okay.
It's not a quick fix, but a lifelong journey of
Mm.
self-discovery
Yeah.
and transformation.
It sounds like a holistic approach to living a more fulfilling life.
Mm.
No wonder this resonates with so many people, even today.
Absolutely. And within the Eightfold Path, the Buddha emphasized mindfulness.
Okay.
He wasn't just talking about meditation retreats.
Right.
He gave specific practices,
Okay.
like focusing on the breath,
Mm.
even paying attention to each bite while eating.
Oh.
Imagine applying that to your own life.
Yeah.
How would that change your daily experience?
I can see how being more mindful, present in everyday moments,
Right.
could be transformative. Was that a key part of his teachings?
Yes, mindfulness was central to his teachings. It's a practice that's more relevant than ever. In a world of constant distractions,
Right.
mindfulness helps us break free from the cycle
Yeah.
of constantly dwelling on the past or worrying about the future.
Right. Okay, so mindfulness is key. Are there other teachings from the Buddha that kind of stand out to you?
Well, the Buddha also stressed compassion, and not just as like a nice idea,
Right.
but as an active force for change. There's a powerful story about Angulimala,
Okay.
a serial killer who was transformed by the Buddha's unwavering kindness.
Wait. The Buddha befriended a serial killer.
Angulimala was notorious for collecting his victims' fingers as trophies,
Oh, wow.
but when he encountered the Buddha,
Yeah.
something shifted.
Okay.
The Buddha's peaceful presence and compassionate words, they melted away Angulimala's rage,
Wow.
and he eventually became a monk.
That's a powerful example of, the transformative power of compassion. It really highlights the depth of the Buddha's teachings that even someone so lost can find redemption.
Exactly. And it speaks to the potential within each of us for transformation and healing.
Yeah.
Now, the Buddha also taught the concept of anatta, the idea of non-self.
Okay, non-self. What does that even mean?
Think of it this way. Your personality, your memories, your desires, they're all constantly shifting.
Right.
Clinging to a fixed self is like trying to grab smoke.
Okay.
The Buddha saw this clinging as the root of much of our suffering.
So it's not about denying that we exist,
Right.
but about recognizing that we are constantly evolving.
Exactly.
That's a pretty radical idea.
It is, and it can be quite liberating.
Yeah.
If we let go of the idea of a fixed self,
Yeah.
we open ourselves up to the possibility of growth
Okay.
and change.
This is all pretty mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah.
And it sounds like some of these ideas, like mindfulness and compassion, have really stood the test of time.
Absolutely. The Buddha was ahead of his time in many ways.
Yeah.
His teachings offer timeless wisdom that continues to resonate with people from all walks of life,
Yeah.
regardless of their religious beliefs.
Yeah. So we've covered the basics of the Buddha's life and some of his key teachings,
Right.
but I'm also intrigued by the more fantastical side
Oh, yeah.
of the stories, the
Yeah.
miracles. Can you tell me more about those?
Ah, yes, the miracles. Now, it's important to approach these stories not as literal truths,
Okay.
but as symbolic expressions of the Buddha's spiritual power and compassion.
Got it.
They're meant to inspire us and point to the limitless potential within each of us.
Okay, like metaphors for his enlightenment and the
Yes.
power of his teachings.
Exactly.
So what are some of the most captivating miracle tales?
Well, there's the story of the Buddha levitating to escape an attack by Devadatta,
Okay.
his jealous cousin.
Wow.
And then there's the miracle of the poisoned food offered to the Buddha, which transforms into beautiful flowers.
Levitating and poison turning into flowers. Okay, I'm hooked.
There are also tales of the Naga, a serpent king,
All right.
protecting the Buddha from a storm.
Wow.
And then there are the Ditthaka tales, which recount the Buddha's past lives,
Okay.
showcasing his acts of kindness and sacrifice even before he became the Buddha.
These stories are incredible.
Yeah.
They really paint a picture of someone who's operating on a whole other level of consciousness.
Exactly. They're meant to inspire awe and wonder and point to the transformative potential within each of us.
Yeah. These miracles, they're not just cool stories.
Yeah.
They highlight the Buddha's radical idea that our potential for transformation is limitless.
Precisely. And this focus on inner transformation is something Buddhism shares with other spiritual traditions, even those that seem very different on the surface. You know, in your research, you included Thich Nhat Hanh's book, Living Buddha, Living Christ.
Yes. It seemed like an interesting connection to explore.
Let's dive into that and see what surprising connections we can find between these two seemingly different traditions.
All right, I'm ready to explore the common ground between Buddhism and Christianity. Okay, so we're back and ready to kind of dive into those connections between Buddhism and Christianity. It's fascinating to me to consider how these two traditions, seemingly worlds apart, right, might actually share some common ground in surprising ways.
It is. And Thich Nhat Hanh, in his book, Living Buddha, Living Christ, he beautifully articulates those connections.
Okay.
You know, both traditions, they place a strong emphasis on love, compassion, forgiveness. They encourage mindful living, spiritual practice, and they both recognize the power of community and fellowship.
So despite their different origins and theological frameworks, there's this shared emphasis on ethical values and the importance of, you know, living a life guided by love and compassion.
Precisely. And these shared values can be a source of inspiration for interfaith dialogue and understanding. It's about building bridges instead of walls.
I love that. It's a reminder that there's more that unites us than divides us, even across different religious traditions.
Yes.
But of course, there are some fundamental differences between the two.
Okay. Christianity centers on the concept of God as the creator, the ultimate authority. While Buddhism emphasizes self-awakening and the path to enlightenment through one's own efforts. Christianity believes in an immortal soul, which contrasts with the Buddhist concept of rebirth without that soul, that
so there are different ideas about the nature of reality and the ultimate goal of spiritual practice. But even acknowledging those differences, I think, can be an opportunity for learning and growth.
Exactly. By engaging with different perspectives, we kind of expand our own understanding, challenge our assumptions. It's all part of the journey of seeking wisdom.
Speaking of journeys, we've talked about the Buddha's individual journey to enlightenment. But he didn't just keep his insights to himself,
No.
He created a community, the Sangha, to support others on the path. Can you tell me more about that, like how the Sangha actually came to be?
Well, after his enlightenment, the Buddha began to share his wisdom, and naturally, this attracted followers who wanted to learn and practice alongside him. This growing group of dedicated individuals, this formed the Sangha, offering a supportive network for those on the path of awakening.
So it was like an organic movement, people drawn to his message. And finding connection and support within this community.
Exactly. It was like the original spiritual support group.
Wow. That's a great way to put it.
And as the Sangha grew, the Buddha established guidelines for the community. A set of ethical guidelines, practices for both monks and nuns.
Wait, nuns too? I didn't realize that women played such a prominent role in early Buddhism.
That's an important point. The Buddha was quite revolutionary for his time in recognizing the spiritual potential of women. His own aunt, Mahapajapati Gotami, became the first Buddhist nun, paving the way for countless women to join the Sangha.
So the Sangha wasn't just a boys' club. It was truly inclusive. That's remarkable, especially considering the historical context.
Indeed. And the Buddha established specific rules for the nuns to ensure their well-being and safety within the monastic community, demonstrating his commitment to equality and inclusivity.
It sounds like the Buddha was quite progressive. Were there other key principles that kind of guided the Sangha?
Well, one of the most important principles was the emphasis on harmony and unity within the community. The Buddha encouraged his followers to resolve disputes peacefully, avoid causing division or schism.
That sounds like a recipe for a peaceful and supportive community. But I imagine, even with the best intentions, like maintaining harmony among so many individuals, that couldn't have always been easy.
Of course. I mean, they were human with their own personalities and perspectives. There's actually a fascinating story about a dispute that arose over a minor rule violation.
Oh, drama in the monastery. I'm all ears.
It involved two groups of monks who disagreed about whether a particular action was permissible according to the monastic code. The disagreement escalated, and they stopped speaking to each other, even refusing to share meals.
Wow. Some serious passive-aggressive vibes.
Right.
So how did the Buddha handle this sticky situation?
He intervened directly, reminding the monks that their primary focus should be on cultivating compassion and understanding, not clinging to rigid interpretations of the rules. He emphasized that holding on to those rigid viewpoints, even in the name of righteousness, could lead to disharmony and suffering.
That sounds like a valuable lesson for any group, really. Sometimes we get so caught up in being right that we forget about the bigger picture.
Exactly. And the Buddha's message is particularly relevant in our modern world where, polarization and divisions seem to be on the rise.
So true. It's a reminder that approaching disagreements with compassion and understanding can lead to more peaceful and productive outcomes. But let's go back to the Buddha himself for a moment. We've talked about his teachings, the community he established, but he was also a human being, right? Who experienced aging and eventually faced death. So how did the Buddha approach these inevitable parts of life?
Even in his old age, the Buddha continued to travel and teach, demonstrating that the pursuit of wisdom and compassion is a lifelong journey, not something that ends with physical decline.
So he didn't just, retire to a cave and wait to die. He remained active and engaged with the world until the very end.
Yes. And when his health began to fail, he accepted his approaching death with grace and equanimity. He even used his final days to offer guidance to his disciples, preparing them for a future without his physical presence.
It's so powerful. It's like he was teaching them how to live, even as he was preparing to die.
Exactly. He reminded them of the importance of relying on their own inner wisdom and the teachings he had shared. He emphasized that they didn't need to cling to him as a person, but to embody the principles of the Dharma.
So he was empowering them to carry the torch of his teachings into the future.
Precisely. And he stressed the importance of unity and harmony within the Sangha, urging them to avoid disputes and divisions that could weaken the community.
Even in his final moments, he was concerned with the well-being of his followers and the preservation of his teachings. What a remarkable example of compassion and foresight.
It truly is. And the stories surrounding his death are just as captivating as those about his life.
Okay. I'm ready for the grand finale. What happened in those final moments?
According to the texts, as he lay dying, the Buddha entered a series of meditative states, culminating in a state of profound peace and stillness.
It sounds like he was a master of meditation right up until the very end.
Absolutely. His passing was marked by an earthquake and a radiant light.
Wow.
The texts describe deities weeping and lamenting, while the Buddha's disciples remained calm and composed, accepting the impermanence of all things, just as he had taught them.
Wow. What a powerful scene. It speaks to the transformative power of his teachings, the profound impact he had on those around him. What were his final words?
His final words are incredibly poignant. He reminded his followers, all compounded things are subject to vanish. Strive with earnestness.
Wow.
It was a final call to action, urging them to continue on the path of awakening with diligence and dedication.
That's a powerful message to leave behind. It emphasizes that even though the Buddha's physical presence was gone, his teachings would live on through the efforts of his followers.
Exactly. And that brings us to the next chapter.
Okay.
The preservation and transmission of the Buddha's teachings after his death.
Yes. The formation of the Buddhist canon. It's amazing to think that the Buddha's teachings have been passed down for over 2,500 years.
It's a testament to the power of his message and the dedication of those who committed themselves to preserving his legacy. And the story of how the Buddhist canon came to be is a fascinating one.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into the world of ancient Buddhist scriptures.
Well, it all started with a gathering of the Buddha's most senior disciples shortly after his death. This gathering is known as the First Buddhist Council.
The First Buddhist Council? That sounds like a pivotal event.
It was. Think of it as a summit to ensure the accuracy and preservation of the Buddhist teachings for future generations.
Okay, that makes sense. You wouldn't want different versions of the teachings floating around, creating confusion and potentially distorting the Buddha's message.
Precisely. It was crucial to establish a clear and consistent record of the Buddha's words and the guidelines for monastic life.
Okay.
And this council was led by a monk named Mahakasyapa, who was highly respected for his wisdom and deep understanding of the Dharma.
So what happened at this council? Did they just have everyone, write down what they remembered?
Well, remember, at this time, the teachings were primarily transmitted orally.
Okay.
Writing wasn't as widespread as it is today.
Right.
So different disciples recited the Buddha's discourses and the rules of monastic discipline from memory.
Wow, they must have had incredible memory.
Right.
But how did they ensure that everyone was reciting the same version? That seems like it would be a challenge.
The council was incredibly thorough.
Yeah.
They meticulously reviewed and verified each recitation, ensuring consistency and accuracy.
Okay.
It was a collaborative effort to preserve the Buddha's teachings in their purest form.
So it was like a rigorous fact-checking process. No room for creative interpretation.
Exactly. And this first Buddhist council is considered a pivotal event in Buddhist history. It marked the formal establishment of the Buddhist canon, the collection of scriptures that would become the foundation of Buddhist tradition.
So we have this council, these incredible memory feats.
Yeah.
But at some point, they must have started writing things down, right?
You're right. Eventually, the teachings were written down.
Okay.
But it wasn't until centuries later.
Wow. So for generations, the Buddha's teachings were passed down purely through oral tradition.
It is.
That's incredible.
It speaks to the power of human memory and the dedication of those who sought to preserve the Buddha's wisdom.
So when did they finally start putting pen to paper?
Yeah.
Or brush to scroll, as it were?
The first written versions of the Buddhist canon are believed to have appeared around the 1st century BCE in Sri Lanka.
Ah, Sri Lanka. A key player in the spread of Buddhism.
Exactly. And these written texts became known as the Pali Canon.
Okay.
One of the most important collections of Buddhist scriptures.
So we have the Pali Canon.
Yeah.
Are there other versions of the Buddhist canon out there?
Yes, there are.
Right.
As Buddhism spread throughout Asia,
Yeah.
different schools and traditions emerged, each with its own collection of scriptures and interpretations.
So it's not like there's one single universally accepted Buddhist Bible.
That's right. The Buddhist canon is actually quite diverse, reflecting the evolution and adaptation of the Buddhist teachings across different cultures and historical periods.
That makes sense. After all, the Buddha himself emphasized the importance of adapting his teachings to suit different audiences and contexts.
Precisely. He encouraged his followers to use his teachings as a guide,
Yeah.
not as rigid dogma.
So even though the Buddhist canon contains a vast amount of material,
Yeah.
it's not meant to be taken literally
Yeah.
or followed blindly.
Exactly. The scriptures are meant to inspire reflection,
Okay.
understanding,
Yeah.
and ultimately the awakening of our own inner wisdom.
It's inspiring to consider how much effort went into preserving and transmitting the Buddha's teachings over the centuries.
It truly is. It highlights the profound impact the Buddha's teachings had and continue to have on countless individuals. People dedicated their lives to memorizing, reciting, and eventually writing down these teachings, ensuring that they would be passed down through generations.
And it's thanks to their efforts that we can still access the Buddha's wisdom today.
Absolutely. The Buddhist canon is a treasure trove
Yeah.
of insights and practices that continue to offer guidance and inspiration to countless individuals around the world.
You know, this deep dive into the world of the Buddha has been an eye-opening experience. I've learned so much about his life, his teachings, the formation of the Sangha, and the evolution of the Buddhist canon.
It's been a joy to explore these topics with you.
And you know me, I love a good challenge. But even I'm feeling a bit mentally full right now.
I understand.
It's incredible to think that we've only scratched the surface of this vast and multifaceted tradition.
There's always more to discover.
Yeah.
The depth and richness of the Buddhist tradition are truly remarkable.
Before we wrap up our deep dive, I'd like to leave our listener with a final thought to ponder.
Okay.
We've explored the historical Buddha, his teachings, the communities that formed around him, and the scriptures that preserve his legacy.
Right.
But ultimately, the real journey,
the
journey of awakening, is a personal one.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
It's not about becoming a scholar of Buddhism or memorizing ancient texts. It's about taking the essence of the Buddha's teachings, the mindfulness, the compassion, the understanding, and weaving them into the fabric of our own lives.
And that journey, that inner transformation is a miracle in itself.
Exactly. So as you go about your day, remember the Buddha's message. Be present.
Yes.
Be kind.
Be awake.
Be awake. It's amazing to think about the journey those teachings have taken. You
know,
to reach us today, we were just talking about the first Buddhist council and all that.
Yeah, all that work they did.
To make sure the Buddha's words were passed down accurately.
It shows how dedicated they were. Imagine trying to memorize, like, entire philosophical discourses and complex rules. It reminds us how precious these teachings were.
Really, absolutely. And they had to do all this without, widespread writing and all that.
Right.
But eventually, those oral traditions were written down. You mentioned the Pali Canon. Those texts from Sri Lanka. Can you tell me more about them? Like, what are they exactly?
The Pali Canon, well, it's a collection of scriptures written in the Pali language. It's considered the most complete and authoritative record of Theravada Buddhism, which is, the dominant form of Buddhism in Southeast Asian countries like Thailand, Sri Lanka, Myanmar.
So it's like the foundational text for Theravada Buddhism.
Exactly.
Okay.
The Pali Canon, it's divided into 3 main sections called baskets.
Baskets.
Yeah, Pitaka, that's what it means in Pali.
Okay. There's
the Vinaya Pitaka, which outlines the rules of conduct for monks and nuns.
Okay.
The Sutta Pitaka, a collection of discourses attributed to the Buddha and his close disciples. And the Abhidhamma Pitaka, which contains philosophical analyses and interpretations of Buddhist teachings.
Okay. That's a lot to unpack.
It is, yeah.
It sounds like a comprehensive guide to Buddhist thought and practice.
It is. And what's fascinating is that it's not just, a dry academic collection of rules and doctrines. The Pali Canon is filled with stories, parables, even poetry.
Oh, wow.
That bring the Buddha's teachings to life.
That makes sense. The Buddha himself was a master storyteller.
Yes.
Using stories and metaphors to kind of convey complex ideas in a relatable way.
Exactly. And the Pali Canon, it preserves that richness and vibrancy. It's a treasure trove of wisdom and inspiration, not just for scholars, but for anyone interested in exploring the depths of Buddhist thought.
So the Pali Canon represents the Theravada school of Buddhism.
Yes.
But you mentioned that other schools and traditions emerged as Buddhism spread throughout Asia. Did those traditions develop their own canons?
They did. As Buddhism interacted with, different cultures and philosophies, new interpretations and practices emerged, leading to the development of different schools of Buddhism. Each school developed its own set of scriptures, often with variations and additions to the original teachings.
So there's no one official Buddhist canon, like recognized by all Buddhists.
That's right. It's more like a family of related texts, each reflecting a particular lineage and interpretation of the Buddhist teachings.
What are some of the other major Buddhist canons?
Well, another significant collection is the Chinese Buddhist canon, which is a massive compilation of texts translated from Sanskrit, Pali, and other languages into Chinese. It represents the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism, which is prevalent in East Asian countries like China, Korea, Japan.
So the Chinese Buddhist canon is kind of like the counterpart to the Pali canon, but reflecting the Mahayana perspective.
Yes. Mahayana Buddhism, it places a strong emphasis on the ideal of the bodhisattva, a being who delays their own enlightenment to help all beings achieve liberation.
Wow.
The Chinese Buddhist canon, it contains many texts that explore this ideal, as well as other key Mahayana concepts.
That's fascinating. It shows how the Buddhist teachings evolved and adapted to different cultural contexts.
Exactly. And that's one of the remarkable things about Buddhism. It's adaptability, resilience. The core teachings have remained remarkably consistent over the centuries, but they've also been interpreted and practiced in diverse ways, enriching the tradition and ensuring its relevance across time and cultures.
It's almost like a living, breathing organism that continues to grow and evolve.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that Buddhism is not like a static, monolithic entity, but a vibrant tapestry woven from the experiences and insights of countless individuals.
Over the centuries.
I'm struck by the fact that these canons, these vast collections of scriptures, they represent the culmination of so much effort and dedication on the part of like countless individuals.
Absolutely. It's a collective endeavor spanning millennia.
Wow.
From the first Buddhist council, where the Buddha's disciples meticulously preserved his teachings in their memories, to the scribes who painstakingly copied and translated texts, to the scholars who continue to study and interpret these texts today. Generations of Buddhists have dedicated themselves to ensuring that the Buddha's wisdom would be available to future generations.
It makes you realize that we owe a debt of gratitude to all those who came before us, who kept the flame of these teachings burning brightly.
We do. It's a humbling thought.
Yeah.
And it also highlights our own responsibility to carry this legacy forward.
That's a powerful point. It's not just about like passively receiving these teachings.
It's about actively engaging with them and finding ways to, embody them in our own lives.
Exactly. And that's what makes Buddhism so relevant today. It's not just an ancient philosophy or a set of rituals. It's a living tradition that offers practical guidance for navigating the challenges of life and cultivating a deeper sense of peace, wisdom, and compassion.
Well said. It's been an incredible journey exploring the life and teachings of the Buddha, from his humble beginnings to his profound enlightenment, the formation of the Sangha, and the preservation of his wisdom in the Buddhist canon.
It's been a joy to delve into this rich and multifaceted tradition with you.
And to you, our listener, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to learn more about the Buddha and his timeless teachings. Perhaps you'll even be inspired to explore some of the texts we've discussed, to discover for yourself the wisdom they hold.
Remember, the journey of awakening is a personal one. It's about taking the essence of these teachings and integrating them into your own unique experience.
So as you go about your day, we invite you to be present, be kind, and be awake.